Mantour Ministries presents the Mantour Guy Podcast. We may talk about football. We could mention bacon. We might reference Rocky movies. We'll probably discuss the Mantour conferences, but we'll definitely talk about how to grow in our walk with God. Here's your host, the Mantour Guy, Jamie Holden.
Hey guys, welcome to the Mantour Guy Podcast. Jamie Holden here. We're happy to have you join us here today. Well, we're excited today to be joined by Duane Goodling. Duane is the missions director of Think Missions. I'm going to let him share a little bit more with you about what Think Missions does, but I know that he has a tremendous passion for men's ministry and also world missions. So Duane, it's great to have you join us today in the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, I know I am a huge advocate for men and men's ministries to be missions-minded. I really believe that men can't always just be taking in and just always growing inwardly. They have to also be serving outwardly and giving out in missions and acts of service. When did missions become so important to your life?
It really started later in my life. I wasn't saved until my late 20s, and my wife and I had lived in New Hampshire for a couple years, and during my time in New Hampshire, the pastor of the church had mentioned a missions trip, and it piqued my interest, and I went to the meeting to hear more about it, and the mission trip was going to be to Russia. And I was like, wow, that'd be really cool to go to Russia on a missions trip. But I really had no idea what that meant. I didn't even know what missions really meant. I was only a Christian for about 2 years at that time, hadn't been exposed to missions. And so I went to the meeting, learned about it, and I decided I was going to sign up for this trip. And just on faith and to be able to have an opportunity to travel. And the trip actually ended up being canceled. They didn't have enough interest, and it just never came to fruition. But it really sparked an interest in me in missions. And about a year and a half later, my wife and I moved back to South Central Pennsylvania, where we're both from and live now. And our home church had been doing missions trips. So when we came back to that church, and they mentioned a missions trip the following year, I was like, yeah, I'm going to sign up for this. I'm definitely going to do it. And that trip at the time was a little different than most trips that our church had taken in the past. Most of the trips they had taken were to Mexico, but this was going to be to Ketchikan, Alaska. And the reason I say it was different is for those that have been on a missions trip to Mexico, generally you're working with very poor people, kids that just, if you give them a piece of candy, it just makes their day. And our trip to Alaska was different in that it was more of a spiritual uplifting type trip. It was a very depressed area. Some of the canneries had just recently closed. There was a lot of depression, and they were struggling with some teen suicides. And we were there really to uplift their spirits more than do anything construction-wise, evangelistic-wise, although we did do some of that. And that trip, for me, I loved it. I actually absolutely fell in love with just the concept of going and just working alongside of people. And some of the other people from our church that had gone on some of the Mexico trips, they didn't care for it as much because, you know, that trip of going and working with the poor people and building and working with the children, it was different. It was different. So, but for myself, that just really sparked an interest in missions. So to the point where I was ready to sign up for the next year trip as soon as we came home. And that was 2002. And, you know, from that point, I've been on at least one missions trip every year except for the 2 years that my two boys were born. And I was always the first one to sign up. I was ready to go. No matter where we went, it really didn't matter. And I just really fell in love with missions at that time.
And I know now you're the missions director for Think Missions. Could you share a little with the listeners about what Think Missions is and what the goal is, what you guys do?
Yeah, we're a missions agency. This began in 2008 by Pat Summers. A lot of people know Pat Summers around the Pendle district. He was a pastor of an AG church for about 20 years, and he was very heavily involved in missions at the time, and just felt that pull into missions to the point where he resigned pastoring the church that he planted, and became president founder of Think Missions. The vision of Think Missions is to serve and empower the North American church to fill the globe with life-giving churches. So our goal and our vision is to plant churches. That's where at the core of who we are. And not just plant churches, it's apostolic church plants. We work with the indigenous people in the countries we go to, and we help plant churches with them, and then it's their church. We can follow up with them. We communicate and to see how they're doing, but there's no Think Missions churches anywhere in the world. So we're just very focused on planting churches where there are none. When we try to go to places that are a little more difficult to get to, we don't go to the places typically where it gets a lot of missional attention. And we focus on those areas that there's definitely growth happening, and that there's not a lot of other organizations going to those places. And again, that's where we try to focus.
That's great. And what are some of the places that you guys go on your trips? You mentioned you go to some of the lesser known, out of the way places. What are some of those places? And like once you get there, what do you do? What's the work that you do on the ground during your trips?
Sure. We go to Cuba 4 or 5 times a year. This year we'll be there 5 times. We go to Bolivia, and next year we're going to be going to India. And what we do there, Pat Summers has been going to Cuba for about 15 years now. And back when he first started going there, he asked the national leadership, what is the thing you need most to help you exceed in your ministries? And they said they need more churches and they need training for pastors. And so from that point on, many years ago, Pat had created our plan and our focus in Cuba to be training church planners, which in Cuba they call missionaries, and planting churches. Overall, Think Missions has planted or helped to plant 401 churches since 2008. The overwhelming majority of those are in Cuba. And what we do there is we support their church planting program. And, as an American, we can't purchase property there. So we just support their ministries that they do and help them along with their lines of what they do as far as getting churches started. And we also hold church planter training conferences. So each of the trips that we cover all 5 districts in Cuba. We hold a church planter training conference with the church planters in that district, and we also help support their church planting efforts that they do. And it's just really been a blessing. I've been there several times there myself now since I joined Think Missions, and just to see the passion that the people in Cuba have, it's just tremendous. I mean, you get those that go on missions trip know that a lot of times we get blessed more, we feel like, than even the people that we're blessing. But in Cuba, they're just so grateful and so thankful because they've been suffering for a long time. There's a lot of persecution. And we just come alongside them, love on them, and try to give them a little bit of training, a little bit of support as far as doctrinal and uplifting and spiritual lifting as well. And it's just a wonderful event. We've also had started training them for foreign missions. Up until recently, Cubans couldn't legally leave the country. About 2 years or so ago, they were allowed then to get visas to travel overseas for periods of time. And Pat Summers had a vision to start training for foreign missions. So we actually took one of our Cuban leaders down there to Bolivia with us to help build a church. And it's been a struggle. We haven't been able to get him back there since, but we're still working on it. There's still some roadblocks we run into. But we're looking to try to train Cubans, not just for foreign missions, but specifically for like the 1040 window over in the Middle East and Southern Asia, because Cubans are going to make great missionaries. They know suffering. They've been through tough times. They're going to have a culture shock's going to be pretty big for them because they've been so isolated. But they know how to preach the gospel, and they're going to be wonderful missionaries wherever they go. So we're looking to try to speed up that process and train them to get them prepared for that. So that's our work in Cuba. When we go to Bolivia, we go the last week of July every year. And the past 2 years, we've been in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. We've done work in La Paz and Cochabamba, and we built a church from ground up in a week's time. We have some people on the ground that will do some prep work. So when we get there, there's a foundation and a roof typically, and then we do the rest of the work. And last year, we actually built an entire church about 40 feet by 60 feet in about 4.5 days. And, the Lord is obviously part of this the whole way, because We had about 24, 25 people last year, and most of them, if not all of them, really had no construction experience. And we built an entire church in 4.5 days. And it's when people come together and they have that single focus of doing the Lord's work and completing this church. They're very open. They listen. They put all their effort into it, and it really comes together. It's really a wonderful thing to see how people will come together and work. When you're doing the Lord's work. While we're there, we also do a little bit of evangelism in some of the local schools. We try to set up that pastor in that church for success. So we'll do some evangelism, introduce that pastor to the headmasters of the school and to the children. And we've had a lot of success with a lot of kids getting saved, raising their hand for salvation in the schools. And we do some street ministry as well around the church. Again, we want that church to be successful as much as possible. And we've been able to plant churches in areas where they've struggled to plant churches. We planted churches in Santa Cruz. The city's built in rings. We built them in the outer rings where growth is happening. We've also built them in areas where there's already a lot of population. And they're very strategic in how they plant their churches there.
You had mentioned about something I thought was really interesting, how you're training the people of Cuba to go out and be missionaries. That's just really interesting to me. You mentioned that you sent them to the 1040 window, I think you said. Could you explain to the listeners what that is? And to me, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, the 1040 window is, if you look on a globe or in a map, you have the longitude and latitudinal lines. The longitudinal lines, I think, are the ones, I might have this backwards, I'm not a graphic guy, but are the ones that go horizontal. Whatever ones those are that go horizontal, that's the ones I'm talking about. Between 10 degrees and 40 degrees over in the Middle East and Southern Asia area is where the overwhelming majority of unreached people groups are. I don't recall the percent off the top of my head, but it's a large percent of unreached people groups. So if you look at the stats from the Joshua Project website, about 87% of foreign missional activity is actually done in areas that already have a full gospel witness. And only about 1% is actually done in areas that are considered unreached. It's kind of shocking to look at those stats that we tend to go to places that already have the gospel and don't tend to go to the places that don't have the gospel. And, one of the things that, we try to keep an eye on, again, is going to those low-reached areas. And, the 1040 window is where most of them are located. That's one of the reasons I'm so excited about India, and there's getting more and more missional activity in Cuba as well. And Bolivia doesn't get a lot of attention either from North America because it's a little hard, a little more expensive to get to. There's not a lot of activity there, and but that's what we focus on. So that's the 1040 window, and it's an area that definitely needs a lot of attention. In India itself, they have 1.3 billion people. 1.2 billion of those people are considered very low or unreached. It's a huge missions field, and there's a lot more persecution happen there, unfortunately, and it's getting tough to get in and do things. But we're focused on getting this project done that we're going next year and trying to win some souls.
And what is the biggest need the churches in these areas face that men and men's ministries can help with?
Yeah, there's the biggest need that we believe in focusing is planting churches and creating a local church. I know there's a lot of discussions on what is the biggest, best thing to do. We believe planting a church is the best thing to do in the indigenous area because the church really is the hope of the world. And when you have a church planted, you can draw people in and you can disciple them. So we're supposed to go into the world and we're supposed to, witness to the world and make disciples. Well, we can witness to them through evangelism, but to make disciples, you need to have a foundation. And that foundation, is really, we believe, is the local church. So for men to have an impact in that, being able to support organizations that plant churches, we believe is important. There's many that do that, and we're just one of them. But to be able to support that, certainly to go on the field and help plant churches or build churches is something that can be helping. Probably the most important thing that not just men, but anybody could do is pray. We just need to pray for the success of churches that are planted and for more churches. So that people around the world can have a place that they can fellowship and they can learn about the Lord and they can be discipled and, ultimately, earn their ticket into heaven through that. So, I think when we look at the biggest need, we just need to get to those areas that don't have a gospel witness. We need to preach, witness to them, and then plant a church so that they can be discipled.
And then how can the men, if they feel like they want to get involved, they want to learn more about Think Missions, how can they do that? Or if they want to go on one of these short-term missions trips as a men's ministry together?
Sure. There's different ways they can get involved. I mean, our website is thinkmissions.org. So you can go on there anytime, and it's full of a lot of different information about us, what we do. It has our schedule with the different trips. It also has contact information for Pat and I specifically, and it has some pictures from some previous trips. Just keep in mind our website, there is some sensitive things that we can't post there. So you don't see a lot about Cuba. You don't see you won't see anything really about India. And, so if you go on and say, well, I thought they did this and it's not there, that's why we can't publicize some of that. So contact us directly, we can do that. As far as getting involved, we would love to have people join us. We're always looking for different people to come alongside and join us on trips. And, so you can communicate to us through the website. And my email also is Duane@thinkmissions.org. That's DUANE. So you can always email me as well. And there's other ways to support, though, even if you don't go on a trip. Some of the things that we do is, of course, build churches. Cost money to be able to build churches. So certainly we'd appreciate anybody's financial donation alongside of that. But we also buy Bibles and take Bibles in that. So some of these pastors in some of these poor countries, we buy bikes, we buy horses. We do some of the things that like Speed to Light does, another awesome organization within the Assemblies of God. And, so there's a lot of things that we have to do to take in. We put together care packages where we've had men's ministry groups had put care packages together of toiletry items or just basic need items that we can take in with us as well to be able to distribute to help out. And so it's a whole range of things that people can do to get involved. Certainly reach out to us if you need if people are interested and not sure what the priorities would be for some of that. We'd be willing to talk to them more about that. And, I can also make a trip to visit a men's group and could speak to a men's group as well. If they have questions about what we do or would like more information, I've done that as well.
Well, guys, I really encourage you to check it out. It's thinkmissions.org is the website. And like I said earlier, I'm a huge believer that men and men's ministry needs to be missions-minded, service-minded. We can't always be taking in, guys, and just like getting full and, soaking everything in. We got to let some of it out or we're just going to get fat Christians, right? We need to be reaching the lost. We need to be doing acts of service. We need to be missions-minded. So I encourage you guys, check it out. It's thinkmissions.org. And we're going to be back with more with Duane after this short break.
I know you're going to dig this.
Like what you're hearing? Head over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Thanks.
No matter where you came from, what you've done, or what you struggle with, God can use you. He can restore you. He can put you in the starting lineup and use you to change the world. Let's stop believing the enemy's lies. In Mantour Ministries' book, Get in the Game, you will review the game tapes of biblical examples to learn what plays they made, where they fumbled, and how we can gain a victory. Order your copy today at mantourministries.com. It's time to get off the bench and get in the game.
Order your copy today at mantourministries.com. Yep, you're listening to the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Number 1. 9 out of 10 boys and 6 out of 10 girls are exposed to pornography before the age of 18. Number 2. The first exposure to pornography among boys is 12 years old, on average. Number 3. 83% of boys and 57% of girls have seen group sex online. Number 4. 69% of boys and 55% of girls have seen same-sex intercourse online. Number 5, 32% of boys and 18% of girls have seen bestiality, that is, sex between a person and an animal, online. Number 6, 15% of boys and 9% of girls have seen child pornography. Number 7, 71% of teens hide online behavior from their parents. Number 8, 28% of 16 to 17-year-olds have been unintentionally exposed to porn online. Number 9, 20% of 16-year-olds and 30% of 17-year-olds have received a sext. That is a sexually explicit text message. And number 10, 39% of boys and 23% of girls have seen sexual bondage online. If you'd like to get well over 200 of the most up-to-date facts, quotes, and statistics about pornography use, go to covenanteyes.com and download their free ebook, Porn Stats.
Sign up for Covenant Eyes using the code Mantour at checkout and receive 1 month of free service. Visit covenanteyes.com today to sign up. And remember, 1 month of free service when you use the code Mantour. That's MANTOUR.
The Mantour Guy Podcast, helping men grow in their walk with God.
Hey guys, Jamie Holden here. Did you know that only 10% of churches have a healthy, thriving men's ministry? That's only 1 out of 10 churches. Well, my mission is to see this number become 100%. Join me in my work with HEUS Missions to help develop men's ministry in the local church. Become a monthly financial investor in the work God called me to do by going to mentorministries.com/partner and clicking on the Give Online button. Together, we can see God continue to move among men.
Welcome back to the Mantour Guy Podcast.
All right, guys. Well, welcome back. We're joined again by Duane Goodling. Duane is the missions director for Think Missions. And now it's time for our shameless plug.
Shameless plug time.
Switching gears here, the Pendle District is holding an event for men. It's coming up on November 18th. Duane, can you share with the listeners what they can expect at the Bacon Fest? I love bacon.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. This is a first-time event for us for Light for the Lost. In the Pendle District, we haven't done a lot of promotion for Light for the Lost for probably about 10 or more years, and we want to jump back in that. And just recently, I've been helping out with the Light for the Lost program as a coordinator. And for those that are not familiar with the Light for the Lost, it's a program. It's to empower the church to provide God's word for every person on the planet. That could be either through paper tracts or electronic means, any way possible to get the gospel out to the world. That's what Life for the Lost helps, and it's a men's ministry program. And we're real excited about this Bacon Fest that we're going to have. It's November 18th at Harrisburg First Assembly in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's going to run from 9 o'clock to 10:30 in the morning. And we're going to have bacon first off. I mean, it's going to be a great breakfast event, and I'm looking forward to just having that. We're going to have different types of bacon and some other breakfast items as well for those that may not enjoy bacon as much as we do. And it's $5 for adults, men or women are invited, and $2 for youth. And that's basically just to help us cover the cost and know who's coming. Tickets are available on the Pendle website. You can go to the Light for the Lost page on the drop-down box under Ministries, and you can get tickets on there. And we're very, very excited to have Greg Hubbard join us as the main speaker. Greg, a lot of you may know him as being an evangelist in the area. He travels all over the world and just a tremendous communicator, and we're excited to hear him speak as well. And so we're looking to do this as a kickoff again towards promoting Light for the Lost in the district, and we're going to take an offering or some pledges there to help support Light for the Lost. One of the areas that we traditionally have supported through Light for the Lost in the Pendle District is the curriculum for Teen Challenge, which is extremely important for these guys that are trying to get off of drugs and alcohol, and we're able to bless them by providing curriculum that they can use. And so we need to keep those funds coming and flowing so we can keep that curriculum in their hands, as well as supply needs of other people that have a need for gospel material over the world that have requests for funding for that might not be able to get elsewhere. So it's going to be a wonderful event. I encourage anyone that's even close by to make the trek to Harrisburg First, again, November 18th. And you're going to enjoy yourself. You're going to have some good food and some good word.
Okay, what time is that at? November 18th at what time?
It starts at 9 o'clock until about 10:30. So it's just a short little time out of the morning. And there's some things around the area that you can do. If you bring your son along with you, it's a great event. You can bring, wives and daughters are invited as well. But there's a lot of outdoor shops around there. You got Bass Pro, you got Cabela's, you have Dick's around, Field and Stream, and so we can make it a whole morning event if you'd like, rather than just coming to the event and going home. You can spend some time with family as well. It's a great time.
And guys, I encourage you to check it out. It's going to be, like you said, November 18th at Harrisburg First Assembly. It's a very easy church to get to. It's right off Interstate 81. It's about maybe half a mile up the road from 81. It's a very easy location to find. Greg Hubbard's going to be speaking. It's a great time to get together with a bunch of guys and support missions. And, of course, there's bacon, so why wouldn't you want to be there? Everybody loves bacon, right?
Yeah, and we're looking to do some more events in the future as well. This Bacon Fest, we're looking to make it almost like just a initial one that we do, and we'd like to do it at other churches as well. We can do it as a morning event or evening events, and just start getting this spread across the Penndale district again for promoting Light for the Lost. So if you're interested in Bacon Fest, but you haven't, you're not in this area or can't make it that day, just reach out to me, and we can certainly look at possibly doing one at your church with you, or providing the information and helping you pull one together as well. So it doesn't have to be just this event. We want to do them in other areas as well.
This is the Under Construction Zone.
Well, Duane, and and as a lot of listeners know, that next year our Mantour theme is under construction. And I heard you say you do a lot of under construction projects with your missions groups. What's one of your funniest construction project failures or stories you could share with the listeners?
Well, I'm a fan of the podcast. I've listened to them since you started. Didn't catch up with the last one or two from traveling, but so I was prepared for this question, and I was thinking back to a story, and unfortunately, I have a lot of poor do-it-yourself type projects, and so it was hard to narrow down. But I think the one that is kind of the funniest was when I was a teenager. We had a wooden stool in our house. And I decided I was going to build another one because it got used a lot, and I thought having two would be good. So I had no idea what I was doing. And so I go into my garage, and we didn't have power tools. I had a handsaw. So I'm trying to make a four-legged stool with handsaw. And when I was done, it looked okay, but it rocked. It rocked back and forth. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just take a little bit off of one leg. And I did. And, of course, it still rocked. And I took a little more off another leg, and it still rocked. And till I was all said and done, the legs were about 6 inches long, so it was actually not really very usable anymore as a stool, because I had to take so much off the legs to make it sit flat that it really wasn't very usable anymore. But it taught me a valuable lesson in when you're cutting the legs of making a stool, is cut them all together at the same time. I didn't know that, and but so I learned a lesson out of it. But it was kind of funny that I showed it to my parents afterwards, and they just kind of got a chuckle. And I don't think we've ever used it. I think it probably just got torn apart or something, because it really was worthless when I was done. So that's probably the one that kind of stuck out to me for some reason from even back when I was a teenager.
And I know you're a football fan. You're a Cowboys fan. I'll still let you be on the show even though you're a Cowboys fan. But, who are you picking for this year's Super Bowl picks? I know it can't be the Cowboys. They're not looking too good, but who are you going with?
Well, hey, the Cowboys could still get in there. They could get on a roll. I don't know, So, I always have the Cowboys as just kind of a backup pick, even if it's not the major ones. But, in the NFC, it kills me to say this, but the Eagles look really good.
Yeah, they do.
And I can't believe I even said that. But, the Eagles have been playing really well, and if they can keep staying strong the way they are, and a lot of other teams struggling, it kills me to say I think maybe the Eagles. In the AFC, until somebody knocks down the Patriots, I don't. They played so well. The Chiefs have been strong, but I'm going to go Eagles Patriots.
Wow. The Patriots were my preseason pick, but I don't know this late into the season I'd pick them anymore. But it's interesting.
I don't give up on Tom Brady. When he gets his mind focused and determined on something, I think he could just pull it together, even this late in his career.
Yeah, the Eagles have been looking good. I have to admit, I've always been a staunch Eagles hater, but I'm starting to come around. I really like Carson Wentz. I like what they're doing. So I'm kind of become a little bit of a closet Eagles fan. I'm still a loyal Broncos fan, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm starting to come around a little bit to the Eagles. So, well, it's time now for
The Mantour Lead Pipe. Write it in ink NFL pick.
Okay, so for Week 9 of the NFL, the first game we're going to look at here, as our Write It in Ink pick, is the Chiefs versus the Cowboys. I picked this game knowing you were a Cowboys fan, so I'm sorry. I got to go with the Chiefs on this one. Chiefs just look really good this year. The Cowboys haven't really looked that good. Looks like Zeke's finally going to serve a suspension. I just don't see the Cowboys winning this game.
Well, I picked the Eagles for the Super Bowl, which, it just killed me to do. But, if you would have asked me about this game on, say, October 14th, I would have said, yeah, the Chiefs, they just look so good. They're going to, I don't think the Cowboys can pull it off. But you know what? You Steelers fans out there, Steelers really did a number on the Chiefs back in that week. And, they put a game plan out there that showed that the Chiefs can be beaten and really dominated. So, you know what? I'm going to go opposite here, and I'm going to stick with my Cowboys in this game. I think they'll pull the upset, and they're going to take it.
Then the next game we're going to look at could actually be the game of the week, Falcons versus the Panthers. Panthers have been looking strong. Falcons have not been looking as strong as they did last year. I still think I'm going to go with the Falcons on this one. I think they're going to own the Panthers. I think they're going to take care of them here.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Falcons, they just have so many weapons on offense. As long as their defense can, perform even decently, I think they can pull it out and score enough points to beat them.
And then the game I've had on my calendar since it came out at the beginning of the year, we got the Broncos versus the Eagles. Of course, I'm going with the Broncos, but I think that's just my heart talking. My head says the Eagles are going to kill them, but my heart says I got to go with the Broncos. And also, anybody out there, if you have any season tickets to that game you want to get rid of, I'll happily take them. If you want to donate them to me in the ministry, I'll happily go to that game. So just throw that out there.
I think I can't say the Eagles are going to go to the Super Bowl and not pick them here. Although, again, it kills me. I even circled Broncos on my paper here and thinking about that. But, I think I'm going to have to go with the Eagles on that game. So sorry, Jamie, but, you picked the Chiefs over my Cowboys, so I'm going to pick the Eagles over Broncos.
Well, in Week 7, the lowly Giants, exposed my Broncos' biggest flaw that we've known they had all season, that if you stop their run, they're done. And the Eagles are pretty good against the run, but I still got to stay loyal. I got to go with the Broncos on that one. So then our last game we're going to look at here is the Monday night game. The Lions versus the Packers. Full disclosure, when I made this list of games, Aaron Rodgers had not been hurt yet. But, I'm still going to stick with the Packers. I think they have enough weapons. The Lions, you never know what you're going to get. They're either up or down. I'm probably going to be wrong in this game, but I'm going to stick with the Packers on it.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the Lions. I originally picked the Packers, but, originally I thought the Packers, but, with Aaron Rodgers being hurt, I'm just not sure if they're going to be able to pull it off. I think, their passing game's going to be pretty weak, and the running game isn't as strong either. And I think Stafford and the Lions can really just pull it together and score a bunch of points. So I'm going to go with the Lions on that one.
All right, so there's our Week 9 NFL picks. Our Write It in Ink pick was the Chiefs versus the Cowboys. We both went different directions there. I took the Chiefs, and Duane took his home team, the Cowboys. Second game was the Falcons versus the Panthers. I think we did we go on the same on that one or different?
Yes.
We
Yeah,
both
same.
picked the Falcons on that one. We split on the Broncos and Eagles. I took the Broncos, of course. And the Monday night, we split. So I think it's the first week I split every game but one with the guests. So it'll be interesting to see how it turns out here.
And it's going to be a rough week for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I know, right? That's because I pick too many games with my heart, not with my head.
Yeah.
But that's how I've always been. Well, as we wrap up this week, what would you say to men who have considered trying a short-term missions trip but have yet to make that leap and actually do it? What would you say to those men?
Well, I think we're directed to do missions. I think the Bible clearly states that we're all to go out and evangelize and make disciples. The thing is, a lot of people, when you mention the word missions to them, they immediately go to foreign missions. And it's not just foreign missions, of course. It's missions is basically wherever you are, you can do missions work. So, we would encourage people to just get started, even if it's locally. Do a project. If you have a men's group together, maybe they do a service project in the area, which can be a missional type project. Certainly pray for any missional activity to happen. What we do at Think Missions is we try to make it as easy as possible. So if somebody's looking to get involved in missions and really doesn't know the first thing what to do, that's where we can shine, because we will do everything for you. We handle all the logistics, and essentially you just have to sign up, you raise your funds, and we handle it from there. So for a men's group or individual men that are interested in doing missions, we could be a good organization for you to partner with. But just don't get hung up in the fact that all missions work is overseas or foreign missions, and certainly you can do local, you can do missions that are even in the United States, maybe in a different state, to different groups of people. You can go to short-term trips that are close by. You can do short-term trips that are really far away. And so I think a lot of people that say that they'd like to do missions, but either they can't or don't feel that they have the ability to do that, what they're doing is they're thinking too large. They're thinking, doing something that's maybe beyond where they're at this time, and they can take baby steps to get there. But if they really feel called and that they want to do a foreign missions trip, we can certainly help them. And even if they don't want to join a trip that we're going to, the 3 places that we go to, we can come alongside and train them and help them learn how to get involved in missions. We're big on finding out what is your missional DNA, whether it's a church or whether it's an individual person. We can help them find out, well, what is your missional DNA? What is what you are called to do in missions work? Because it's very important to make sure we're in alignment with what our DNA is, and we can help that as well. So less than 2% of North American Christians are actually involved in foreign missions. It's shamefully low. And of course, there's a larger percent that would be doing missions more locally, but a lot of people don't do missions work, don't feel they can or have the ability to do that really absolutely can and do and should be doing that type of work. And we can help them do that if they would reach out, and we can come alongside.
Well, guys, I really think it's a great idea, too, for men and men's ministries to do these missions trips or to find some way to serve, even if it's in your local community or in your general area. We've got to be men who serve. And I just want to give you this opportunity to learn more about what Duane's doing with Think Missions, and just let you know more about that. So, Duane, thank you so much for being our guest today in the Mantour Guide podcast, and it was great hearing about your work with Think Missions.
It was my pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity. I love what you do here with the podcast and with the Mantours. You do a great job, and keep up the good work with that.
Oh, thank you. And guys, if you want to learn more, you can go to thinkmissions.org. And once again, listeners, thank you all for giving us your time today to listen. We don't take that for granted. We appreciate it very much. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on the Mantour Guide podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Mantour Guy podcast. Be sure to visit mantourministries.com to learn more about our books, men's ministry resources, and our Mantour conferences.